Hello and welcome back to the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. Thank you for joining us again. Our guest today is Andrea Shaprut-Beil. Andrea's entrepreneurial journey began at 16, and since then she's founded 4 successful businesses, both nationally and internationally. She has, over the past 18 years, guided professionals developing a unique method to help them break through unconscious limitations and achieving lasting success. Andrea's focus is to help entrepreneurs and business owners to take a closer look at what is holding them back and to uncover the challenges and transform those challenges into opportunities. I really enjoyed my discussion with Andrea looking at challenges to leadership, but as always, enough from me. I'll hand over to today's guest, Andrea Shaprut-Beil. Andrea, thank you for joining me for this conversation, mate. How are you going?
Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm great. Let's hope the internet connection stays.
Yeah, so after some IT issues we had, we're going to start the recording again. Look, thank you for joining me. Before we kick off into obstacles and challenges to leadership, I'd just like to get a sense of what you do and why you believe leadership is important.
All right, that's a great question. So what I'm doing for the past almost 18 years, I'm working with entrepreneurs and leaders, and I'm doing something called Gestalt therapy, which is Gestalt coaching, Gestalt therapy, which is taking what is happening in the moment right here, right now. And from this situation, we are going backwards and finding the root cause. I'm also working with mindset reset tools, let's put it that way. So we are really going into the deep subconscious levels on what's in the way there, what's a hurdle, what needs to be a little bit reprogrammed in order to live more free, more fulfilled, to create more success or just a better feeling inside of you without guilt, without fear, and with more joy in life. And then obviously, as the human is not just the brain, not just a simple thing. So we need to also consider the physical side, because I'm working with body language, with organ language. So every organ, every muscle, every part of our body is a reflection of a psychological, how do you say that? I don't know the English word for that. I'm sorry. It has a connection to our physical and our psychological world has a connection. So the shoulder tension, the stomach ache, the migraines, all of this has a psychological meaning. So I bring all of this together in order to create one whole approach for the unique person, because everyone is different and it needs different approaches. That's why I studied a lot in that direction. And why I think leadership is important? That's a good question. I mean, leaders have been always there. I think it depends. Leadership is important because people want to be guided. Okay, that's one really important thing. Leadership is important to give good role models also. People need to have someone to look up to. They need to be guided in a direction where they can grow, where they can be challenged maybe, where they see how we can, as a good leader, guides their people. The first thing what popped in my mind was now control. Someone needs to control that, which is definitely not which is definitely not the case, because that's the old leadership style, which many of us grew up with. Okay, that we have to do what our teacher, our leader, our boss is telling us to do. Of course, there need to be some guidance, but at the end of the day, I think leadership changed a lot in the past years. So people need someone to look up to, someone to show them what is a way in order to move forward as a unity, to do it together. I think leadership is a highly responsible role.
Excellent. Look, interesting. A couple of things I picked up from that response. So thank you for sharing that. The first one around mind-body connection to what you do, irrespective of whether you're a leader or not. Yeah, I'm reading more about that, and the one thing that I'm seeing a lot of as I work through LinkedIn, so I look at LinkedIn quite a lot, probably more than is healthy. When people talk about regulating your emotions as a leader, being able to recognize that you shouldn't necessarily react in an emotive way and to try and regulate that emotional response when it may or may not be needed. And I think that's good advice, but in the heat of the moment, these things can happen whether you want them to or not. And it strikes me as curious that it's the reflective leader that will look back and go, oh shit, I stuffed this up. Maybe I could have done this better. What could I have done better? So that space is interesting to me. I've always been a little critical in my own mind around the making excuses for an emotional response because I think if you're in a professional setting, you should be dealing with everyone as professional people and not reacting in an emotive way because things that could go wrong are not necessarily the personal slight on the person who's leading the place, but it's often taken that way. So that's my view. Feel free to
Yeah.
disagree. The second thing that you brought up that I thought is particularly interesting is leaders as role models. I have always had a tension thinking about that because no one is going to be the best role model all the time. And if you're going to apply that to a leader, then you need to see the leader at his or her best, his or her mediocre, and his or her worst to see the whole person to get the best learning that you can out of people. Because I would suggest, again, personal view, that you learn just as much from the good leaders as you do the bad ones. And um, having had enough role models in my time, I subscribe to that view of the world. But can I ask you if you had leaders in your time that were good role models, or did you have some bad ones as well?
Leader or not leader, we are all human beings and we all have emotions. So responding in certain situations in not our best way is an absolutely normal thing. Okay, that's absolutely normal, and we are not superhumans who can
Yeah, 100% agree.
things
100%
sorted
agree.
out all the time, you know. So we're still human beings with a history, with a family, with normal issues like everyone else. So this is one part where I start working with the people, you know, if it's once that, you know, you lose you lose your professionalism, that's okay. If it's something what is reoccurring, maybe we should have a look at it. What's actually laying underneath is what is triggered in that case that you cannot being professional at that moment every time again. That would be something to look at, definitely. Um, what was the second question, Eric?
The role models in your time.
I
So,
am.
good and bad, if you can share that. Well, you don't have to tell me their names, obviously, but
No, no.
if you get to that point where you're talking about role modeling, sorry, that is something that has stuck with you in your
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So I'm self-employed since I'm 16. Okay. I was employed in my life one time for 6 months after changing countries. So that was the easiest, the easiest start. And I was the head of this setting. And the leaders, they've been extremely structured. That's what I understood in leadership from that time. That's quite some years back. And it was very, very, very structured. Um, and I could see they enjoyed their position a lot. Whereas me as a leader, when I have employees, I made sure that we are on an eye level as much as possible because they come with their whole load of emotion as well. Every employee, you know, sometimes they have issues, sometimes they have things going on in their life. So I always try to put them on an eye level from a human perspective. And yes, they are not always at their best then when they are coming to work. But then I have me personally as a leader, I see that as I have two options. I can rather ignore that and say, look, this is your job. That's what you got to do. Or I address that and I said, how can we fix it? How can I make it easier? Because I really think that when people enjoy going to work, they will be much more productive. They will be much more happy. And in leadership, we need to have this connection with our people. And there is enough, I know it from some clients, there are enough leaders who are disconnecting themselves or distancing themselves from the employees out of, maybe because it has to be like this. A position as a leader is not always easy because there are so many things which come with the role of leadership. There is, this immense responsibility which you have for yourself, for the company, for the family, for your employees, for everyone around. So it's a big load to carry. And it's as a leader, you identify yourself also with this, with your leadership. It's part of your life. As once you have your own business, it's like your baby. So it's something what is extremely important for you, and it's part of your life. And one of the challenges I see a lot is that once we reach a certain age, or leaders reach a certain age, they try to step down, but it's like losing part of themselves. Who am I? How can I, the identity, you identify yourself with this role. So who are you besides that? Is there something else in life? What is the joy? Is this the only thing what brings joy to you? So there is a lot of components coming into the leadership role.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to unpack there. The most interesting in my mind, at least for me, is the idea of your whole self as the leader versus something else. And yeah, I have to admit sometimes I find it hard to turn off the
Yeah.
switch or do more work stuff in my own time when I should be doing something else or paying attention to the people that I love that are around me. I think being realistic about what you do in a role is important for a leader. Some of what you mentioned, talking about looking after self, is having a network of people that are completely unrelated to your job so that you can detox and talk about any other things other than the work that you do.
That's very,
I think that's healthy, but it's also healthy to have a network of people who do the role that you do, to talk to them and be able to share war stories and, hey, this didn't work. How did you make it work for you? So that idea of networking and being able to bounce ideas off peers is important too, because I often see the difficulty in the real world sense. How does a leader go to his or her subordinates, their team, and say, "Give me some real feedback on how I'm doing"? I think that's always a bit of a vexed proposition,
yeah.
because are you always going to get the cold, honest, hard truth from the people that work for you? I think sometimes not. And I think someone who's a few degrees removed from you, like a business coach or someone who's helping you look at your practice, will be able to tell you things that you may not want to hear, but they have no investment in whether or not you get offended by that. It's something you might need to know. So I think it's interesting you bring up the connections between the work and non-work. I think nobody gets it right all the time, but at least if you can have a conversation or at least bring it up like you do, that it gives people some time and pause for thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And what is right and what is wrong for someone is always different. Everyone has another wrong and right. What I heard the most now, what you said, is that you need to distance yourself from the work, that you need a break from it. But at the end of the day, when you're going there 9 to 5, that's a huge amount of time of your life. So you better make sure that you like what you do. That's one thing. And it's part of our life, so it needs to be, we need to find a solution how this part of yourself is, that you don't get the feeling to completely disconnect. I understand what you say, that you want to break from it, that you need some space in your mind in order to reset, in order to calm down, or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, that's part of our life, and we don't change our personality in work or in the family. If we have to do that, then it's really tiring, and then it's draining us out. That's what causing burnout, for example, or depression. When we are constantly doing something where we need to change our authenticity, our identity, then it's getting really difficult. So I
That's
think,
not what I meant. So to be clear, I mean
okay, sorry.
the bits of yourself that you take to work to do the tasks at work are not necessarily the things that you're going to be using in your non-work time. So that's what I meant. Not create one personality for work, another personality. Yeah, no, I think that's fraught with danger. So no, I should have
Yeah.
been a lot clearer. Yeah, 100% agree that the if you're a human being, then you're going to be bringing some of yourself to that 8 hours a day that you're working in the job that you do. And for some leaders and some CEOs and entrepreneurs, it's not an 8 hour day. It can be quite a longer day. And you said something that was very interesting. You said the job, if you're an entrepreneur, it's your baby, it's your thing. That adds another level of what does it mean to be in a leadership position, whether you call yourself that or not, or whether an entrepreneur identifies him or herself as a leader, that, yeah, you bring a lot of yourself in. And I, never having been an entrepreneur, I don't know what that feeling is like to think, well, this is my baby and it needs to work. I, I
We
don't,
all have.
I don't envy them. I don't envy them.
Well, yes and no. I think sometimes it's a decision people make consciously, sometimes it's something where you just grow into. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is it's all about how we feel inside of us. So we want to leave a legacy. No matter if it's a 9 to 5 job, no matter if it's an entrepreneur or self-employed person, we want to leave a legacy. We want to feel significant. Okay. And that's something very important. When you go home from work, after a certain time, how do you feel rewarded? How do you feel seen? What do you leave behind? That's some very, very important things to think about. That's what I mean with, we are identifying ourselves not only over our family, but also through our work, what we do, what do we create, what do we shift in people, how do we guide them, what do we teach them, what do we leave behind us. That's a very important factor for our inner world, what we need to know.
Let me ask you this. In your travels dealing with leaders, entrepreneurs, some that are considered themselves both, I guess, what do you see are the three biggest challenges that you run into for those leaders?
Huh, that's a very good question. So one is definitely, once they reach a certain age and a certain level of success, is joy. How to switch off and how to create more joy in life, because all this functioning, and it's becoming normal to overwork. It's becoming normal to constantly be present. It's becoming normal to always carry this responsibility. So how can I, find relaxation and joy? What else is there? Because many of them live in constant functioning all the time. So joy and fulfillment. Who am I without my job, without my work? That's one very, very big question. The other one is loneliness. Okay. Loneliness is something in leaders which comes quite a lot, but people don't speak about, because who are you talking to? Who do you think is on your eye level that you can offload? Okay. So they are very often they're looking for a safe space where they can speak their minds, where they can speak their hearts and their souls, and to be understood without being judged, without running the fear, I'm losing my position because now I'm weak. So that's also something very, very common. And the third one, joy, loneliness, and definitely the legacy. It's something really important for people. What do I leave behind? That's something what really, because the older we get, the more we reflect on the past. What did I do? What if I would have changed my decision at that time? What if I would have that way? Was it the right decision? What if? Okay. And then even further back, if I would have known this, what I know right now, I would have made a different decision. So, there is this, not beating oneself up, but like this, I could have done it better, or I could have done it different, or it would have, this kind of thing. That's also something what comes a lot. Yeah.
A place where people will talk to you without judgment, I guess. Call that a safe space, I guess. That can be difficult to find for some people if they don't know how to look for that. Is that your experience?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I just, as you said, that I remembered about 10 years ago, I used to have a client working in a very high position, and he was working in a something like a hospital, okay, like something like a private clinic, but very, very big, and with lots of employees. And he came to see me, okay, and during that coaching sessions, he told me that there is in his workplace there is a secret VIP entrance for the business owners and leaders who do not want to be seen by the normal people. That's how it was phrased. There was like a secret door on the backside for those people to enter in order to get their psychological sessions. That's how much judged it still is in order to get help when you are a leader and you are in a certain position. That's the perception of the leaders, maybe also the employees, that it's something you need to be constantly perfect and untouchable. But think about it. Every Olympic athlete, every really good person in sports, in politics, in wherever it is, they have coaches on their side. They have people who help them, who reflect them, who are guiding them, who are helping them in order to stay sane. And that's, I think, a very big part of this loneliness, this stigma of I have to be perfect because I'm the leader. I cannot make a mistake. I'm the leader. I'm responsible for everything. So I think this stigma should change, because we are all human beings, no matter if leader or not leader, just with different skills. And it has a lot to do also with the ego. If I'm able to ask for help, it's the most normal thing to not be perfect, or what is your perfect, but the ego is standing so much in the way. And at the end of the day, the only person harmed when you're not asking for help, the only person suffering is you.
Yeah, 100%. I can't speak for others in that space, but I think what has helped me deal with peers and with boards that I've worked with is to say up front, I may make some mistakes from time to time. I'll own those mistakes, and instead of worrying about the negative, how do you fix it so that it doesn't happen again? That trying to be positive about fixing errors of whatever nature is a good way to sort of telegraph to people, I'm just as human as the next person I work with. And if I make a mistake, you need to allow me the space to make that mistake. And as an addition to that, I guess when you're dealing with colleagues, or whether they're more senior or at level, that if they make mistakes, then you need to be available to them to be a sounding board to help them out, because some people don't ask for help, or some people don't know that someone's willing to give them an ear and not say anything and just listen. And that, I think that's a lost art form that and many guests, and you brought this up, and many guests that I've spoken to have said to me, whether it's on the podcast or off it, try and listen more than you speak when someone is coming to you with a problem, because maybe 90% of the time someone just wants to be able to say it out loud so that it gets an airing. You hear it, but they don't necessarily want a solution to it. Someone just wants to be heard. And I think that's just a common humanity thing to do for people, is to be there just to listen. Not, if someone asks me, I need to share a problem with you, if they don't put at the end, I don't want you to give me a solution, I just want you to listen, that changes how you listen to the person. But if someone comes to you and says, I have a really difficult problem and I need some guidance on how you might deal with it, it changes how you engage with the
Of
person.
course, because
So,
then immediately you get the higher position, of course, of the one
100,
who is. Look, we all have this, we all want to help. If someone is asking us for advice, if someone is asking us for help, we're always happy to share our knowledge, to share our experience, also to share our time and our love if we feel that we are significant to them, okay? No matter if we want to be heard, we want to be significant. No matter if someone is asking me for advice, that's giving me some significance. That's something very important, which we all need. And as leaders, we obviously like this a lot, to feel significant, but also we have one of the basic human needs, and that for sure, is the need of belonging. So we want our team, our employees, to have that need of belonging, and we do that. That's why religion is working, politics are working, sport clubs are working, because of that human needs and this need of belonging. And as leaders, we have exactly the same basic human need of belonging, and it's sometimes a little bit more, seems to be a little bit more tricky, because we are looking for like-minded people. And then the challenge comes in, can I share that? Yes, he has the same position than me, but in another company. Do we have the same issues? Can we talk about the problems? Or, as it's more common, we only speak about our successes. So I think when there is a space created, like what I really like is the idea of accountability partners. Someone you trust. It doesn't need to be a huge group. Many people don't like to share in big groups because it makes them very, very vulnerable. And I understand that, or maybe it's a competition company. But if you find someone who is on the same career level, okay, similar age maybe, and you just get along, maybe that's one of the most effective ways on how to reduce the weight, or discuss challenges, or discuss ideas and feelings which are coming up. Having someone you really get along with, and you have a call every other week. And just make it very clear. We speak about this and this and that, because this is what leaders know. They're in general very structured. So the call can be very structured. You have 30 minutes to speak. I have 30 minutes to speak. Please give me your feedback. Please give me your experience. So you're on an eye level in order to feel heard, and then you can share. And that's feeding also our need of belonging, which in my experience, it's very, very helpful.
That idea of being able to have you said an accountability buddy, is that what you said?
Accountability partner, that's how I called it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I've heard of that before, and if that keeps you honest about your own practice, it's very good. I think for me that falls into the idea of my view, not anyone else's
Yeah,
view,
yeah, yeah.
my view that the best leaders I've met are reflective leader practitioners, and that they do the things that you're talking about to various degrees, and the ones that are really honest say, I'm constantly working at it because I have to make time to do this. It's not typical practice for people to stop during parts of their day and just reflect on what they're doing. But when you get into the habit, it makes you better operator, and it makes you think about the, that psychosocial, the emotional stuff, as well as the operational, all of that stuff you can compartmentalize and think about, well, what if I'd done this? How can I do it better next time? It's easy to say, it's a lot more difficult to put into practice.
Absolutely. That's a very fair point. And time is really of importance. And once we are in the flow of doing something, time is just poof, and it's gone, and the day is finished, and half of the things you wanted to do are done. But then it's about how important are you to yourself. So you need to make this space. I have this with leaders sometimes when they're so overstressed, and the ears start to ring and everything is too much, and you're laughing. Many people have that. So what I do with them, because at the end of the day, sorry, now I have my pen. At the end of the day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes doesn't make a difference. So what I create with the people I'm working with, I create for them something called relaxing islands, which they can use during the day. Once they understand, now my mind starts to race, it's too much, my ears start ringing. That's a sign from your body that you have to take a break. You have to slow down. And 10 minutes doesn't make a difference in your workload, but 10 minutes makes a difference when you turn your chair around and you focus on yourself for 10 minutes. makes a huge difference, huge difference. So to take this intentional breaks sometimes in order to take care of yourself, because otherwise, if you don't do that, you will run out. You will burn out, you will develop, maybe, hopefully not, but the chances of developing some diseases are much higher. All this chronic stress, chronic burnout, it's so normalized. Depression is so normal. It's not. And there are easy things to fix that, easy things to avoid that from the beginning,
Yeah,
because our body.
100%. Just people don't know what they don't know. It's a really important message what you just said there, that these things, high stress jobs, never taking a break, never refocusing on yourself even for a minute, is not normal. But I think some leaders, not all, but some leaders think it's normal because their predecessor did it, or this is just the way it's always been done. It's not an excuse. I'm just looking at the environments that I see people working in, and in some industries, you can think of a few like high finance, law, a couple of those high stress industries that it's almost like a rite of passage. You have to be on the verge of burnout to be perceived to be that level leader. I don't believe it for a second, but it's the way that those industries work. And I think if you looked at the data for burnout and stress in certain industries, you could easily pick out which are your top five that you'd find people that are burning out on a regular basis. And might not be because those people are not any good at being leaders. It's the nature of the industries they work
Yeah.
in. You talked about mind body health connections before. That stuff is really important. But if you work in environments where drinking is a way to relax, potentially recreational drugs as a way to relax, potentially not eating healthy foods, like eating out all the time to meet and greet people. This builds up over time. It's not a overnight thing, and I'm not excusing it for a second, but got to be realistic about the industries in which people work in. And what they never train you at university or high school for is this is the nature of the workplace.
But when we talk about schools, I have a little bit of different view. As long as you can read and do some basic calculations, you're fine. In my experience and my big daughter experience, you leave school, you know a lot of stuff which you will never ever in your life need again, but you don't know how to read a rental contract. You don't know how to read a sales contract. You don't know how to fill out the bank check. So the basic things, you don't know how to invest. No one is teaching you what you really need to know. Okay, and that's in order to create the nice workers, okay, the obedient workers. But that's something we need people to not everyone is a born leader. Okay, that's just how it is, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's all about the balance. It's all about the balance. If you are a father and you're having a 9 to 5 job because it's feeding your family, you do that. You do that, and you do that every day because you have a different purpose. Your purpose is not that you have your dream job. Your purpose is to feed your family.
Yeah,
And that's
100%.
very,
Yeah,
very honorable to do. Okay. But then also is the question, how do you find balance? What do you need in order to even that out? If you do for a long time what you don't really like, what do you need to do in order to find the balance, that you stay healthy, that you stay fulfilled? This is the big question just to answer then. Just.
100%. So what I meant before, maybe again I should be clearer. I'm always learning with these discussions. Maybe I should have been clearer. Don't necessarily have to go to university or college or TAFE. All I meant was that wherever you're learning your skills to do whatever job that it is you're doing, even starting your own business, I think some of those basics should be at least teased out when you're in high school. So one discussion that's being had in where I live in Australia around bringing business and entrepreneurial teaching in high schools for those kids that don't want to go to uni, don't want to go to college, and want to start their own business. And there's not a lot of that. There's some of that across this country, and it's done very well, but it's not a common thing. And it's something I never
Not
put my
common.
mind to that. how many hundreds of kids leave school every year that could start their business but don't know how? The idea that you brought up, Andrea, around financial literacy, very important. Everyone should have that, but not everyone does when they leave high school at whatever age, that there are some important things to learn. And I understood what you meant, that potentially not everyone wants to be a leader. I understand that 100%. But for the better leaders that we're trying to develop in the system, to equip them to understand what those challenges that we talked about before, to be able to be their best self, best health, best mental connection to that needs to be done earlier in the piece, not when you're sort of mid-career at the end of your career, because you could be at the point of burnout, and some of these interventions may not help you to the degree that if you were forearmed or knew something of techniques to get a better mental health perspective on this. I don't, you know what I'm talking about, that to understand that these challenges are coming, that stuff I think needs to be at least flagged with younger leaders as they start to progress, because as they know it, they can pass it on and model that behavior to the next generation. So I think it's a vicious circle if you don't find a way to break it, and then potentially train your next generation of leaders to go, okay, what you do is important, but it's not everything. And to be the best at what you do, you need to consider your own mental health, your own personal physical health, and the health of the people around you to get a better outcome for everyone, is what I think I'm hearing you say when we first
Yeah,
talk.
yeah, definitely. Because I'm saying since many years, understanding the basics of the human psychology and human well-being, what keeps us healthy, what keeps us balanced, well-being and wellness starts to become a little bit more accepted, and it's getting a little bit more awareness in companies. But I think the basics of it should be taught at school. Basic knowledge like knowing the alphabet and knowing how to calculate. I think it's to that importance. And of course, it wasn't like this 40 years ago, 50 years ago, because the knowledge wasn't there. But now we have the knowledge and we have the tools, so we should use them and we should integrate them in order to make it smoother for the kids to grow up and go into adulthood and go into their lives in order to be more stable, because everything is also much faster with the internet. There's much more information to digest. It's not that our brain can't do it. It's very smart. Okay? It can do it. We just need to find a way on how to balance it out and how to handle everything. So I think the more integration and more teaching we can do, the easier it would be for the younger generation to handle all those noises around them.
100%. Look, final question for you, looking into the crystal ball for the next 12 months, say 2 years. What do you think is the biggest challenge coming at leaders over the next little while?
That's a very good question. Let me think. The young leaders are coming. Okay, all these young leaders, they're much faster, much more productive with all the AI stuff, they are so fast, they are so pushing. And once you're at the end of the career or in the middle of the career, you need to keep up. So that's going to be a big challenge, what I see for leaders in the workplace, and how to not feel overrun by that. You know what I want to say? That it's not because they are really good young leaders out there, and they are much faster because they use different tools. They have a different perspective. So to match those two leadership generations, that's going to be very interesting, very challenging for the older leaders, in order to see that. I just hired a few young guys to make me some content, because I'm 43. I'm not 20 anymore. So I'm slower. Definitely. I have a different perspective on things. When my daughter reads something, I need 3 times the time to read the same text. So that's the difference. They're so much faster than we are. So that's going to be a big challenge. So, but at the end of the day, it's about feeling good with ourselves. Feeling good with ourselves, feeling content, that's really important, and feeling at ease. So one of the big questions I like to ask is, if, and it's a tough one, but if you would die tomorrow and you know it, what would you regret that you didn't do? And that's a really big question, because we speak about time and the 9 to 5 job, and I don't have time for this, don't have time for that. At the end of the day, we have one life like this. So yes, we can struggle at times. Yes, it can be challenging at times, but when do we take the time to sit back, see what we really like, and find a way on how to do things which are really bringing joy to us? What would be the what would be the thing you would regret if it would stop tomorrow? That's a very big eye opener, because we don't consider that when we are so much in the machine of doing and working, we don't consider that at a certain point, that's it. And we don't know when it is.
It's an incredibly difficult question that you pose at the end there. And yeah, it's challenging for all sorts of reasons, I guess, is what would you pick? You said regret? When you
Yeah,
said,
I said, what would you regret not to take time for,
oh,
not to change?
sure, okay. Yeah, no, God, that'd start a fairly interesting conversation there. And look, it's as you travel in leadership positions, I think what comes up a lot is um, I'm doing this in this industry, but what if I did it in another? What if I'd gone down a different professional pathway? Going back to the earlier discussion around the what if I'd made a different decision at some point in my life, would things have been different? I think what we're really asking is if I'd made a different decision, would it be better? And I think that is telling with people that when you use the hindsight and you're thinking back, is it a decision to make things better for you, to make things better for somebody else, or you feel it would be a better decision than what you did now? And I think there's something sad to that as well as, you can learn from that, but I think that's part of being a human being is that you think a better decision or other decision would have led to something better.
Definitely, and at that time, that was the best choice you knew, and you thought this is going to give you the best outcome. That's what you knew at that time. So it was maybe meant to be for you to go that way. But, you know, I believe there is something to be grateful for in every situation. And sometimes we are not 100% grateful, only 70% maybe, but still focusing on the positive side of it, because this changes a lot in our mindset. And it's true. I'm grateful for, it's feeding my family, it's giving me a nice career, but hey, this might have been better, but you didn't do it. So be grateful as much as you can. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not 100%. That's fine.
And that's a very positive way to end the podcast. Andrea, really appreciate this. Thank you for your time, mate.
Thank you very much for having me. Hope it helps.
Oh, 100%. Love these conversations. So, for those listening, this has been the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. Thank you for joining us. Hope you'll follow us on the video or the audio versions of the podcast. Have a great day, rest of your week, and we'll catch up again on the next episode of the podcast.